Okay, so everybody, thank you so much for coming to this week's meeting. I'm going to begin sharing my screen here for the opening notes. Okay, so Citizen Assembly Women is a place where one can connect with others to share ideas and experiences, where we can speak freely and authentically as the best version of ourselves. It is a place to share our unique perspectives and offer encouragement to those who are currently experiencing struggles that seem particular to women. We seek resolve for society and the enabling of healing for the whole. We aspire to come from a place of love and gratitude. Okay, and like I said before, meetings are now uploaded to both the International Logic Party and Citizen Network TV YouTube channels. All right, so we're going to go down here to the schedule. We're going to begin with the opening notes and then introductions. An idea will be presented. We will have a simple vote, followed by open discussion, and then another vote following that to see whether anyone's ideas or perspectives have been changed in regards to whether they support an idea. And then we'll finish with our closing comments. So would anybody like to volunteer to read the opening notes this week? Trying to scroll through here. All right. Okay.
I can volunteer. All right.
Okay. I actually saw Megan's hand go up first, so I'm going to let her read the notes. But thank you for your willingness to volunteer. Go ahead, Megan.
Thank you. So we are here to empower and encourage one another by coming together authentically. We encourage political, philosophical, artistic, and experiential ideas. No topic is off limits. All ideas will be written and prepared for presentation so as to enable a focused discussion. We provide a platform for this process at agora-ilp.org. Number 3, all ideas will be treated with consideration. Number 4, we all have a voice here. Type hand up in the chat whenever you want to talk, and please be respectful. Wait your turn and be patient while others speak, and refrain from profanity. Our network is inclusive, but trolls may need to be dismissed. Number 5, we encourage connections outside of the group. Use the chat for this purpose, for group side conversations, and for any initiatives that you may support. Number 6, please share any benefit you receive in this group with others by sharing on social media and/or by word of mouth. And number 7, to fully participate for our meetings, register for Agora at agora-ilp.org. Agora also contains information for our upcoming meetings. To stay connected, join our Facebook group, Citizens Assembly, at facebook.com/groups/Citizen Assembly.
Thank you very much, Megan. So now we're going to move on to introductions. Your name, your location, and or place of origin, and 2 words to describe yourself. So I'll start. My name is Lois Diggs. My location is Norfolk, Virginia. And 2 words to describe myself are energized again, because I was energized last week. Okay. All right. Kay, will you please introduce yourself?
Definitely. Hi, everyone. My name is Kay, and I'm in San Jose, California. And 2 words to describe me now is I'm awake and I'm warm. So I'm feeling cozy. Thanks.
Awake and warm. I love it. Megan, your turn.
My name is Megan Draving, and I am from San Antonio, Texas. And 2 words to describe me, I would say nourished and excited for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. That is very good. Nourished, it's a good word. Sybil, your turn. You are muted, Sybil.
Like I said, problems with technology. Sybil Jones. I'm in Bryan, Texas. And 2 words to generally describe me, retired but active. That's it.
Thank you. That sounds like a very good combination. All right. Phil, will you please introduce yourself to the group?
He's muted.
Yes, you are muted right now, Phil. If you can't unmute yourself, you can write something in the chat. Oh, okay, there you go.
I was up. What happened? What's the question?
Oh, so we're going through introductions. So if you could give your name, your location and or place of origin, and then 2 words to describe yourself in this moment.
My name is Philip. I'm in San Jose, Silicon Valley. I'm hungry, so pretty much it. Is it? Did I cover everything?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. Kathleen, it is your turn.
Yeah, I live in Stockport, United Kingdom. I'm originally from Hollywood, California. 2 things to describe where I'm at, or the feeling now is just nervous about the politics going on here and the economy. Hoping things will get better. That's it.
Thank you, Kathleen. I also hope things get better, both for you and politics and economy in general. Okay, Stacy, you are next, and then you can go straight into your presentation on toxic femininity.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Stacy Gustafson. I split my time between Northern Michigan and Southwest Texas. And 2 words to describe me right now. Number 1, happy. There's just so much amazing stuff happening right now in our group and in my life. And I am focused for this presentation. And I will start screen sharing. Okay. The premise. The media would seem to support a meme that the masculine portion of humanity is toxic, while the feminine portion of humanity has no such parallel. I believe this is out of holistic balance, and I offer this narrative and solution in order to return holistic balance to this apparent issue. I define gender toxicity as gender-specific strategies, coping mechanisms, and tendencies that diminish others. While I believe broad generalizations cannot adequately address any issue, I offer some for brevity. This is a personal example of what I perceive to be common maladaptive strategies and coping mechanisms used by people on the feminine spectrum. I want to make it crystal clear at the outset here that my mother, the subject of this idea, has only the highest intent and wants only the most loving and positive outcomes for everyone around her. Also, that I understand I clearly have unresolved issues surrounding this subject. It is our maladaptive cultural ideas that I wish to focus on in this example and solution. I offer here 3 areas of evidence of feminine toxicity. Statements that, number 1, statements that reveal the opinion that others are less than, unfixable, bad, wrong, etc. And this is what I call gossip. 2, giving of oneself to an unhealthy level, not accepting things in return and expecting the same of others. 3, getting needs met through mental, emotional, or social manipulation. Toxic masculine versus toxic feminine. I believe any general lack of ability, if valid, to see the feminine version of gender toxicity is tied to the passive/receptive feminine nature versus the active masculine. An unbalanced man who has been taught by society to value success above all, and that success means winning, will push out of the way anyone barring their path to success. Overcoming one's contenders in a man's world, such as business or sports, is a highly visible event. An unbalanced woman, on the other hand, being naturally more passive/receptive than active, and being taught by society that the woman who wins love is invisible and self-sacrificing above all, is not allowed such visible means of achieving anything in their life. I therefore wish to make better understood the feminine side of the gender toxicity coin for the sake of balance. The basis for my idea. I distinctly remember deciding as a preschool child to emulate my father rather than my mother. From my observations, my mother was a victim of her emotions. I observed her crying on her bed when I was very young, and it stuck with me. My father, on the other hand, appeared to be the driving force in our lives. He was the businessman who needed extra care at home because he worked until exhaustion, morning until night, as a car salesman. He was also the champion of my mother's craft ideas. He was the person that opened doors to large corporations and dealt with the opposing forces of lawyers, financiers, and company leaders. My mother complained vociferously about those men and men in general and blamed men for virtually everything she disliked. Based on this, I concluded she felt unable to deal with men successfully. My mother also often stated that she never wanted to receive the accolades of fame or success. She was happy to stay in the background. My father taught me I needed to be tough because it was a man's world and everyone was out to get me. My mother taught me to have the ability to earn money so I'd never have to depend upon a man. I also watched plenty of TV and movies which portrayed women as out of control emotionally, often needing a man to slap them into rationality so that they could accept direction and join the man in rising above the freight of victory and a happy ride off into the sunset. In light of all these feminine tendencies to stay quiet and in the background, I failed to see many of the things my mother did that contributed to the success of her crafts. I also decided that not just my mother, but all women were weak and ineffective, especially around men. So I determined to figure out what it was about men that made them so different, powerful, and capable compared to women. My investigation found, though, there is no such determining factor. Men are not in possession of some special sauce that women don't have. It has only recently come to my attention that these things my mother desires me to copy are actually very toxic or diminishing to others I interact with. While steeped in good intent, these beliefs women hold about themselves being pillars of virtue, if they conform to society's ideals of a good woman, quote unquote, are extremely maladaptive and even harmful to those around us. I now see that while she, and I in turn, does not actively ask for what she needs or wants, she is fulfilling this through manipulative strategies. One is the making of statements that identify the subject as broken or bad. For example, someday you'll understand, fill in any statement of goodness that she has that I don't. These statements sound encouraging, but they're actually saying, I have this and you don't, an assumption that shows she is viewing me or others as lacking some essential ingredient. Most of her conversation revolves around how bad other people are, even loved family members. This instills in the listener that in order to gain the approval of the mother, one must avoid any of the behaviors she is berating in others, and that does not leave a large selection of behaviors that are acceptable to exhibit. In addition, disagreement with her worldview brings a huge angry reaction that can go on for hours unless I agree with her view or agree to seek counseling. While a personal experience, I believe this is a powerful illustration of toxic femininity. I or others need professional help or need to be repaired unless one adopts the feminine worldview. The result is a perfect heaven in which only one person exists and every other person, other than Martha Stewart, must fix themselves to be worthy of a place beside her. I do not mean to say that women are the only ones who manipulate people by making them feel bad, but I do feel that the ideals that society and women have adopted as good need to be exposed and questioned. As a wise woman recently said, life is a cycle where both life and death, giving and taking, must exist in harmony. To only give and nurture and to have the appearance of receiving nothing in return results in maladaptive and manipulative strategies and tendencies in an attempt to re-achieve the balance that every body needs. My solution is I recommend a comprehensive educational platform designed for varying ages, early education to adult education, that teaches balanced masculine and feminine interactions and changes our society's view of success to a happy, healthy family.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Stacy. It was a lot, and I was like, trying to follow along and read notes. So I think we have a lot to discuss, and which is something that I look forward to. But for now, we will have just a simple vote for this idea. So if you agree with what is being said here in this idea, please indicate so either by raising your hand, or you can type hand up in the chat. So if you agree with this idea, hand up. Or okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and K. Okay, so if you have reservations or don't agree with this idea, then you can raise your hand or type hand up in the chat. You also have the option of abstaining from voting if you're very neutral. Okay, so we have 6 yay and 1 abstain. So let's move into discussion for this idea. First of all, does anyone have any questions about what Stacy wrote and shared?
Yes.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Kathleen.
I mean, I don't think even after like women's rights and everything, we have the same rights as men in this day and age. I mean, we have more rights, but I still think it's not equal. Because I find like a lot of my interviews are run by men. It's kind of rare that I get an interview with women, you know, at least here.
Yeah.
And the last one of the last interviews I had was with 3 younger men, which was a bit intimidating.
I didn't quite hear that. Could you repeat that, Kat, please?
My last interview was with 3 guys. And that was a bit, and it was only a first interview. So that was a bit intimidating.
I understand why.
Yeah, yes. If I remember correctly, you are in the computer science field.
IT.
Information technology, okay. And I think that is a more male dominant field right now in general. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then we also have other fields that are more female dominated, such as childcare or education, nursing, for example. Yeah, I know, speaking for myself, if when I go to the bank and there's like 3 bank tellers available, I usually will go to the female teller if there's a female one, because I'm just more comfortable. Like, generally speaking, all things being equal, more comfortable interacting with people of my own sex.
Why is that, Lois? What do you expect you will get from a woman that you won't get from a man, or vice versa?
I don't know. I just feel like with men, I sometimes need to be more guarded or like reserved or careful, things like that.
For your personal safety?
No, not for personal safety, but just I don't know, to feel like more comfortable in the interaction, in the dynamic of the interaction.
Do you feel like they're a different type of person and you're not sure how to interact or what they expect?
Well, I do recognize that men are different from women generally. What was the second part of your question?
I don't remember now.
All right, that's okay. Maybe we'll come back to it. Megan, you have your hand up.
I'm gonna say, because I agree with you, Lois. If I'm gonna go somewhere, usually I'll go. I just feel more comfortable if it's a woman, because I think it probably goes back to just our nature. Like, if you really think about it, how we live for millions of years. If the men went out and hunted, the women would stay together and care for the children together. So women are more nurturers and have like the more community aspect. So I think it's just in our nature to feel more socially comfortable, because in nature, when men and women react, it really is like they interact, it's for the sole purpose, I think, of course there's like mutual interactions, but mostly it's so you can, start your own family, reproduce, and have kids. So I think it's just in our nature that there's another interesting thing that if I can find the link to the video, I'll link it because it was really interesting. But somebody did an interview, and they went to a college campus and they asked guys and girls the same question, and it was, can guys and girls be friends, just friends? And all the women said yeah, and all the men were like, honestly, no. And I thought that was so funny, because it's like, yeah, as women, we're like, yeah, we can just be friends, we're good. But a lot of times for guys, it's just not what they're thinking at all. So I find that really interesting. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Megan. I actually saw that video, I think back when I was in college. It was kind of funny, but yeah, it was funny, but I didn't, it kind of blew my mind because I don't know, I guess it was just surprising to me to see that. But anyway, Stacy, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Well, you might be able to see from my presentation that I chose to follow the masculine path in my life. And so this is kind of hard and scary to admit, but I will go to the man teller, not the woman teller, because of what I have experienced from that I perceive as difficulties with women. I'm much more comfortable with men.
Very interesting. Yeah, I guess experience plays a big part in what we're comfortable with certain kinds of people. Just another reason why diversity in hiring is a factor and is important in things like this, so that everybody can find someone they're comfortable with, ideally. Okay, Sybil, your turn is next. You are muted right now, Sybil.
There, now, and then I turned off the video. Okay, now we're ready. I'm doing this on a cell phone, so that's one reason I'm having so many problems going back and forth. I had an interaction at the bank. I walked into the bank, there was only one teller, a nice young man. And I asked him, if we could do what I needed to do. Oh yeah, that would fine. I was afraid it was going to get a little complicated. And in fact, it did. And so then he called for a manager or someone higher up than him to come over and give him a hand with it. And that turned out to be a woman. And she did a beautiful job of walking him through it in a very kind of business-like but pleasant manner. And we got it all sorted out. But to me, it was like, usually it would have been the other way around. A young woman teller with a male manager coming over to help out. I was quite pleased to see that it had switched there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sybil. So yeah, I actually like being surprised. It's fun and you learn things. So Stacy said that ideally we'd all be comfortable together, men, women. Yes, I completely agree. And when I said my comments earlier, I didn't mean to say that I'm uncomfortable dealing with men or something like that. It's just that all things being equal is just personal preference. If all of the tellers at a bank were male, I would not have a problem with that personally. But Kat says some women at the bank are difficult. Oh, so she tries to avoid them. Oh, okay, yes. Yeah, yes, people of any sex can be difficult, clearly. Working in, yes, IT is mostly men. Okay, so I wanted to make some comments on Stacy's presentation. I think I do, as I expressed, I do agree with this idea, and I do think that we need to re-examine our ideals of success in our culture. So yes, that final conclusion in your sentence, I think, was really on point. And yes, it is a unbalanced that we talk about toxic masculinity so much, but we virtually never hear about toxic femininity. And you pointed out one of the reasons why is because it's like more hidden, more behind the scenes. And some examples are women who, don't want any attention. They're just fine, just serving and being in the background and things like that. But if someone is always in the background, we never get to see them. Like, we never get to see like good things that are happening or dangerous things that are happening. So thank you for bringing this to our publicly published discussion here. Yes. So, all right, Megan. Yes, Megan, you have your hand up. You're next.
Yeah, I really loved the conclusion too, because I totally agree with that. I mean, really, the real success is a happy, healthy family. And also, the saying that men and women should be equal, I agree with that, and I also don't agree with it, because we're equal, but we're also completely different. And I think that we need to really own that. Like, we should own our femininity, not in a toxic way, and men should own their masculinity, not in a toxic way either. In our society now, we do need the educational programs, because most people are just completely lost because they didn't have the examples of a strong woman and a strong mother and a strong father to look up to. So now we do have to teach that. The way I look at it is, if we can teach that and teach, I like to say, like, women are queens and men are kings, and together they have a kingdom. And so what we need to do is teach women how to be queens and men to be kings. And now they can be great examples to their kids that follow. But I think that whenever, like, bringing the whole feminism movement, I don't really agree with feminism at all. I think that in a sense breeds toxic femininity, because one of the biggest pillars of feminism is we're equal to men, we're just as strong. And I totally agree to that. However, now, like, as an example, I might have talked about this before, but 150 years ago, when it was just the man working, he had more buying power than a working couple does today combined. So what happens is women have now entered their workforce to be equal with men. But the reality is, women have stepped out of the epitome of femininity, which is being kind of similar, like the backbone of the family and raising the kids. Now no one's there to do that. And so now they're sent off to schools. And what that all does is it really destroys the family. So I think that men have distinct roles as providers, women have distinct roles as nurturers, and they both go together, and you can interchange them a little bit. But I think, whatever way to describe that, I guess the point would be equal, but also distinct.
Thank you very much, Megan. I think I have some things to say and respond, but first I would like to give the floor to Stacy. Stacy?
You said that we're either masculine or feminine, and I wanted to say that I used to believe that, but after listening to people in these meetings, I find that the actual thing is we're all on a spectrum. So some may have a more tendency towards feminine and less towards masculine, but there is always that masculine in there. And even the person that is, wildly feminine, maybe I just said that the same way, but it's all on a spectrum. And I think that it's necessary to start viewing people more on a spectrum to understand the whole person.
Thank you, Stacy. I think that is an excellent observation. It is true that each of us does have masculine and feminine energy. And, the way that I look at it, toxic masculinity is someone operating in so much masculinity that they're unbalanced and they don't have any feminine energy to balance their actions and words and their way of being in the world. And it's the same thing with toxic femininity. You can be so like giving, passive, that there is no masculine energy to like assert yourself or like to take action or speak what you want or what you think, things like that. And but I think that, yeah, so it's good to recognize that we're all balanced, and then also to recognize patterns and tendencies. I was actually listening to a podcast this morning about someone's relationship to labels, and she doesn't like labels, but she recognizes that they can be empowering and helpful. So, I find it all very fascinating. Okay, so, oh yeah, I did want to respond to Megan on, yes, I agree, we do need examples of people in healthy relationships, because you have to think, who are the celebrities in our society today? Are they like sports stars, movie stars? We just see them doing their thing on their own. We don't really get much of a picture of them in relationship. But there are celebrity royal couples, for example, like Meghan and Harry, Prince Harry and Meghan, for example. Yeah, and I think having more examples of healthy relationships would be good for our culture. All right. Also, I don't think anyone else has their hand up right now, so I will continue speaking. I was really fascinated, Stacy, with what you observed about manipulation, because, I personally think that manipulation is something, or like passive aggression is something that's a little bit more common in females than males. And what you wrote helped me to see why, because passivity is a feminine energy, and if you don't have enough masculine energy to be direct, you can end up being passive aggressive and manipulative like this.
Feeling powerless.
Yeah. I think that was really interesting. And so I wanted to ask Phil if he had any of his thoughts to share with us, because I think Stacy said she was curious to hear your perspective, and I think some of us also are curious. So do you have any thoughts to share?
This topic is interesting to me because in my own meetup, Philosophers and Gamblers, we went over, I think, 2 readings about related to feminism, right, by 2 authors. One of them is Butler, the other is, I can't remember the name because it's French. Anyways, Bavar, yeah. So I'm interested in the different gender roles that men adopt and women adopt. And I think this notion of toxic femininity, as I understand it, is kind of like pushing the gender role for women to the extreme, right? Like passivity, being passive, being less assertive, letting men lead, being a supporting role, being perceived, like, for example, being perceived, as more of a looker than a thinker and a problem solver. You're gonna act in certain these kind of gender roles that, it's interesting.
Yes, thank you, Phil. I was also present at those feminism meetings for philosophers and gamblers. So I am very grateful that Stacy offered this presentation in this timing. Stacy, please go ahead.
I wanted to address, earlier you said the celebrities. What you said, first you talked about role models, and then you said celebrities. And I thought, celebrities as role models. Oh my goodness, that's such a big topic. Were we looking at celebrities for being role models way back when? Who were our role models? Why do we look for celebrities to be them? And why would we copy celebrities? And the idea that we don't see them in relationship, I believe, is because they want, the industry wants each person to attract an audience of the opposite sex to follow them. And if they believe that they are in a relationship, they're not as likely to follow. I think that's very damaging. That's it, like air that we breathe. It's something in our culture that we don't even recognize. And what are the results of that?
Oh, Sybil, I see that you have to leave, but thank you very much for joining us. Do you want to have do you have a final comment before you go? It looks like you're frozen right now, but regardless, thank you for being here. So, all right, I'm going to go next. So it's interesting that you're speaking about that, Stacy, this celebrity role model dynamic. I don't know if anyone here has heard of Joseph Campbell, but yeah, I watched a series featuring him called The Power of Myth. And Mormon, no, I don't think so, although maybe. But he said that humans need he said that humans need heroes, or in other words, role models. And those heroes and role models were religious figures for a long time, like heroes in the myths. And then also I think, war heroes and royalty. And it's interesting because that is one of the arguments that some people use for monarchy, because they say that humans need role models. And if you don't have, and that like royalty, although not perfect, is better than a lot of the movie stars or whatnot that we have now. And that if people don't have something decent to look up to, they're going to drink up and turn to what we have or what's worse. But I'm curious to see, anyone else have any comments on this very interesting subtopic?
I guess I would just say that I think the need for a role model, I think it really stems from, once again, it all goes back to the parents. So, people to look up to. The issue with that is we don't have a lot of strong parents. It's just the truth, especially in the modern world. It's usually a woman who's broken in her femininity, a man who's broken in his masculinity. So the children growing up never really have an idea of how they should be, or a good foundation to learn from. And that's why our minds can be so easily, it's just true, human minds can be so easily shaped and molded, especially when you're young and impressionable. So if you don't have a strong family to help you do that, then you'll fall victim to all the propaganda units of society, including Hollywood, which pushes out the actors and all the stuff. I think it's interesting. Somebody else brought up this point, but it kind of made me really rethink everything I thought. And they said, why would we ever look up to actors if they spend, their entire days, faking emotions? That's their job. So why are we looking up to? And I realized that too, that the people we really should be looking up to are parents. But then the question is, in our lives, we can go on. We have the opportunity to recreate that with our offspring. But what about all the people in the world today who don't have the opportunity? How do we provide good examples for them?
Thank you, Megan. So important to set good examples wherever you go. I agree with that. All right, Kay, your hand is up.
Yes, thanks. I couldn't agree more. Yes, just as parents, it's just so important. I had to realize that because I'm a parent, that whether I like it or not, there's someone watching me, like as I'm functioning and how I react to certain situations, and and that it does make it really just important I need to make good decisions. That's why I do like Stacy's idea, because for those of us that, I look at it as my parents did the best they could with what they had. So I know they probably had the best intentions, but there's also a mixture of what they would do just to survive. And if that probably wasn't the best decision, then oh, let's just kind of overlook that and keep going. So in just me observing that, I know that, of course, I appreciate everything my parents did, but just as I got older, I saw where, oh, this is how I'm viewing things. And maybe that's not the healthiest way. So with Stacy's idea, if I'm understanding it correctly, it's going to help us to reprogram ourselves of things that aren't the best way to view, but maybe those things weren't available to our parents for them to reprogram, and maybe they accepted those things because that's just how society was and what you need to do it to survive, just kind of adopt these ideas to continue on. So that's one reason why I think it's such a good idea. And I had another thought, and I felt it escaping the back of my head, and now it's gone, but those are my thoughts for now. So thank you, and I yield the floor.
Thank you, Kay. That happens to me too. I don't know what to do about it. Maybe practice or something. I don't know, but hopefully you'll have it. And if you'll regain that thought, and if you do, we'd love to hear it. So, yeah, I see that Kat put in the chat that she looked up to Wonder Woman and Princess Leia when she was younger. I think that is really cool and interesting, because one thing that I was going to say is, looking back, I had role models when I was a little girl. I really admired and looked up to the daughter of King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, who was imprisoned for a long time and chose to make the best of it and be hopeful, and chose to be hardworking and serving, even though she was in such a bad place. I saw that and I was really fascinated, and I wanted to be like her. And I also remember I saw the movie Peter Pan, and I loved the character of Mrs. Darling. I thought she was such a beautiful lady, and I wanted to be just like that. So what I'm saying is, it's interesting that children have a way of latching onto role models. And I'm just thankful that my parents put good stories and characters in front of me for me to see. I think that makes a big difference. But I also want to, as an actor, I would like to say that it's not just about faking emotions. That anyway, I know you didn't really mean it that way, but yeah, what I'm saying is telling stories is really important in our culture, and seeing how so many of our role models are characters in stories. Wonder Woman, Princess Leia, Mrs. Darling, Marie-Therese was a real person from history, but I learned about her through a story. Okay, Phil has his hand up, so go ahead, Phil.
Is it, I'm curious, this need for role model, is it because you want to understand the relationship dynamics between two people and how they get along, between two women, two girls, adults and children, or how a man connect with the relationship dynamic between a husband and a wife? Is that the thing? I think it's the relationship, right? I'm trying, like that's what you want to understand. Is that because I feel like women generally, like when they were young, girls particularly, is that they care a lot about trying to understand the relationship dynamics between characters, right? I imagine that girls would be much more in tune with understanding, oh, let's have a tea party where the animal, like, you're dealing with two dolls having tea party. Basically, you're trying to understand the relationship dynamics, how they react and how they respond to each other. Whereas guys generally care a lot more about things, the universe, things, not relationship related. That's my comment.
Good observation, Phil. Stacy, you have your hand up.
Phil asked, what is a role model? And I would say it would be a person to emulate. And I don't think it would need to be the same sex, but we certainly would be looking more to the people of our own sex, I suppose, for how to behave. And I think that's true that women do tend to analyze relationships a lot more. I would take exception to the fact that men seem to be the people to ponder the universe or those kinds of things, problem solving. I think women problem solve as well. And what's interesting to me, what was brought up in another discussion about toxic femininity, and I didn't even think about this, and I'm surprised nobody brought it up as well. What about the woman who uses their secondary sexual characteristics and beauty to receive favor or what they want? Is this toxic femininity? And somebody, just to be provocative, said that's prostitution.
Oh, yes, that is another interesting topic to explore here. So let's see. I have my hand up, but first I wanted to respond to Phil's question about role models in relationship versus individuals. I think both are important. And that actually reminds me of one of my grievances in current popular movies. Because like all of the romance movies are about two people meeting and fall in love, and it's all exciting. And then maybe at the end they get married. But I don't know of any romance movies that show an example of people continuing to love each other through years of a relationship. I think that there would be a lot of beauty in that, but I don't really know of any movies that show that kind of love story. So anyway, Hollywood, if you're watching this, hint, hint, hint. Let's see. So then Stacy, you brought up this about using one's beauty or secondary sex characteristics to get what you want or to be manipulative like this. Oh, wait, Kat has her hand up. She really wants to talk, so I'll let her go first. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Well, I've seen it in my sort of area of IT, like once I was on a train and I heard these guys who were obviously traveling for business or something. They were talking about hiring this girl. And the other guy said, "Oh, hire her. She's hot." Like they were just going to hire her because she was attractive. And I've had interviews where like I've been with like younger guys and I always get the feeling like they're not going to hire me because I'm middle aged, I'm not young, as pretty as I was when I was younger. So I feel like you sometimes in the IT business, you almost have to be like a model to get hired or to, just look a lot better. I really feel that stress right now of like, not looking like the gaming computer girl. That is like the ideal of programmers and, male IT guys. So yeah, I'm a bit frustrated with that. And I know some women who are pretty probably use that to their advantage. I don't know, maybe I just have to get more confidence in myself and try to ignore the fact that, that's an issue for me right now. I mean, there's no hairdressers open or anything, so I can't do anything right now. And it's really frustrating because I have interviews on Zoom all the time and I can't get my hair cut, or look more attractive or just look decent, I think. And I can cut my own hair, but I can't cut my own hair that well. Oh, I guess that's all.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kathleen. Yeah, I don't think I'm very good at cutting my own hair either, but it's I think it's okay. I think that confidence on the inside, I think, will shine through regardless of how somebody's hair looks. Um, there is, but like, okay. Megan says excellence is attractive, and Stacy says confidence on the inside, yes. Okay, so I'm going to share some of my experiences because I have been hired for a job basically just because of how I look. It was a fine dining restaurant and they were looking for a host. And what basically happened was that the hiring manager saw me and was like, "You're hired," like just based on what I look like. And I was unemployed at the time. I needed to find a job. I had moved halfway across the country straight out of college. It was really like I really wanted a job. And I thought, well, I don't think it's like I had to ask, is it really fair, like, for me to be hired just because of how I look? But I really need a job. So I should, accept it, right? Just thinking about what's right and what's wrong and how I should respond. And then I remember also at that restaurant, like I said, it was fine dining. So there was really delicious food. And I wanted the recipe for one of the dishes. And someone told me, like, hey, like, you're a woman, you can just, use your beauty and, get the chef to give you the recipe. And I thought, like, I don't know whether that's ethical, I don't know. I'm not going to do that. So, but I really wanted the recipe. So all I did was I just said, hey, may I have this recipe, please? And then he gave it to me. So I don't know, like, I mean, I didn't like, you know, do anything inappropriate, of course, but and I wouldn't do that, but I don't know, like, would he have given that recipe to someone who looked different? And is it fair for me to accept that recipe because he gave it to me for, I don't know, questionable reasons? Or is that just his decision that I should respect and not bother myself with? So I don't know, like, it's something that I think about sometimes. But Megan, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Lois, I think that's really interesting, and what Kathleen brought up too, because the truth is the tendency to go for just looks is natural. It's not even that it's good or bad. It's just there's going to be consequences. So, you know, if you're walking down the road, for example, and I see a guy that's really attractive, immediately I'm going to be attracted to him. But you have to also have the inner wisdom to vet the person too, in an interview and in a relationship, because they might look good on the outside, but think of everything with jobs too. Your resume might look good, but what if you paid somebody else to create that for you? So what we need to do is understand that it's just natural. I mean, all animals in nature do it. You go usually for physical attraction, but because we have the intelligence, we also really need to look at within, like, yes, this person looks good, but do they have the qualities to match this job? Or yeah, you know, this dude's really attractive, but is he qualified for where I'm headed in my future? Is that really somebody I should be with? So when it comes down to ethics too, and morals too, if we think about it, they're really just man-made concepts. They don't really exist in nature beyond our idea of them. So, and it's the same thing with good or bad. It's a really interesting concept, but none of them actually really exist because it all depends upon your perspective. So you can look at it from two different ways. But I think part of beauty, I think beauty is also something that's subjective because everybody is beautiful, but somebody else might see somebody and think, oh, they're not attractive. And somebody else might see the same woman and think she's the most beautiful woman in the world. But part of the feminine energy is not necessarily is a receptivity. Like women are really natural receivers. So we should use that not to manipulate, but just understand that that's you know how it is. Usually if women ask for something, they'll typically get it. And I think that's just natural. But talking about manipulating it and selling your body for other things, then it goes into issues because it contradicts self-respect. So yeah, I like what Stacy said, that do attractive people have to develop the same inner relationships? Yes, they do. Because you might meet people that rank a 10 on the, you know, people, we do this rating thing. Oh, this person's an 8, 9, or 10. Well, what do they really rank internally? Because they might be an 8 looks wise, but they might be a 2 intellectually, and you can't even hold a conversation with them. So I think that basically my summary is saying that whether it's good or bad that we're drawn to looks more isn't the question, because it's natural. What we really need to ask, or what we really need to focus on, is getting to know the inner person underneath, because there's so much more to somebody than what they look like. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Megan. So yes, it is important. I totally agree that we need to get to know people on the inside. And I don't think that life is fair. And some people have advantages, other people's don't. Some people have privileges and other people don't. And it's just the way it is. So I think the best way to respond is, if you are privileged, you should be intentional about using that privilege in good ways to help people. And if you're not privileged, you should make the best with what you have and succeed and work towards success in whatever way is meaningful to you. And I also really like what Stacy wrote about beauty being balance and harmony specifically. I think that health has a lot to do with beauty. And when things are healthy, things are balanced. All right, Stacy, you're up.
You were talking about what we should or shouldn't do. And I think that that has, like we should, I can't remember your examples, but I think that has so much to do with our goals. I bring this up a lot. Our goals are not what they should be. So everything along the way gets messed up because we believe that this is what we should be doing. We watch the people that tell us how we should be doing it, but ultimately what they're telling us to achieve is not what we have in our heart. So I love the ability in these meetings to talk about what our goals should be. And I hope that by doing this, we will be able to change our goals as a planet.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Yes, that goes back to your conclusion to redefine success in our society. We do agree with that. And just talking about how to make that a reality, like putting action behind belief, just talking about this. I really like the idea of being a good example to the people around you. And, even just things like this, just talking and posting it publicly online, getting this out there, that makes a big difference too. All right. Does anyone else have anything to add? Megan says, love that. Being a good example is the surest way to manifest change. Yeah. And then also not settling for the default of what society tells us. The media has a big role in making culture, but people have a big role in making culture and in guiding what kinds of media are produced. So what I'm saying is we are far from powerless here. Stacy says, yes, we as people need to take back our planet. Yay. Sounds great. All right. So if there is nothing else, we can go to voting for this idea. So anyone who votes in support of this idea can raise your hand or express it in the chat. NK, yes. All right, cool. What about you, Kathleen? Are you neutral or are you in disagreement?
I don't know. What do you mean? For what?
Oh, for the idea that Stacy wrote about toxic femininity.
What was that idea?
Yes. Well, actually, Stacy, I'll let you summarize.
The idea is that there's been an imbalance in the fact that there's been the toxic masculinity meme, but we haven't heard about feminine toxicity. And so I gave examples of gossip and passive aggressiveness, I think you could say, manipulation that women use as that. I think that's toxic femininity, and we don't see it much because it's a very passive thing. So I offered that education to re-establish a balance between masculine and feminine would be the solution to this toxic masculinity versus femininity idea.
Okay.
Phil has his hand up.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, Phil.
I'm interested in how women deals with aggressive men. Like okay, the way I handle it probably would be, I'm very interested in how women would do it, but I confront with men that are pretty aggressive. If they don't get what they want, they kind of scream and yell at me. The way I do it is I yell back. I push back pretty much. It's not just assertive, it's aggressive, pushing back. And I feel like that's the only way you can handle, men like that. So I'm interested in how women do it.
Interesting question. Stacy?
Well, having chosen to follow the masculine tendency as I grew up, I would say I agree. I mean, I was raised to fight and debate and not let anybody get the better of me. And it actually has helped me in the masculine world, in the business world, in the legal world. But I am finding now that really that can only, in many circumstances, bring more aggression. And there is a way that is more balanced masculine, feminine, where you talk about your experience, but don't back down. And I find that it's really, really important to know good debate skills, that men really value the rational logic ability to make an argument, a verbal argument face to face with somebody. And I don't know that women are taught that. And that is valuable, but it is also valuable to find a balance and talk about your experience will help as well. I'm finding now that that can work as well.
Well, I mean, I would say that guys tend to be pretty prompt when they don't get what they want. For example, I'm thinking about someone that, if they don't get what they want, they would just yell at you. I want this and give this to me. You're such a a-hole and blah, blah, blah. And I don't think you can reason with that person. There's no argument. It's not about feelings. I think that in that circumstances, I don't know how I would do it other than to push back. And, but, I'm not sure the argument is the sometimes when it comes to aggressive men.
Yeah, I think it depends really on the person and the context on what the best way is to respond. Speaking for myself, I don't think I've really dealt very much with really aggressive men in terms of yelling about what they want. I mean, like there is I can think of one example, but I think when I encounter someone really shouting about what they want, I like to respond by deliberately keeping very calm, because that is sort of a way of showing how, like, oh, I'm better than you because I'm not losing my cool. Like, and like just using words like counter arguments. And if the counter arguments do not work, then I end the conversation. Because Leah, like you said, Phil, sometimes there is no reasoning with people. And in that case, why waste your time? Just.
Well, the problem is you're setting a precedent. I also reason that eventuality that I would back down by calming my voice. But again, this would create a precedent, and it's kind of inconvenient because you have to see that person every day sometimes. Like let's say you have a coworker, or let's say you're meeting that person every week, right? By backing down, you invite future you allow that kind of behavior to be acceptable, But anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember learning about interpersonal communication. Communication was that was my bachelor's degree, and it talked a lot about how to deal with things like this and how to make comments and observations that are not personal to the person. Like instead of saying, "You make me angry," you can say, "When you say this, it makes me angry," stuff like that. There are like different techniques and things. But, dealing with difficult people is difficult, of course. So, Megan, you have your hands up.
Yeah, in response to Phil, I think that it's really interesting. I would actually agree with Lois in that if I find I've never had like a guy straight up, yell at me aggressively. In the case that would happen, I think there's two options. One, I think that a real man would never get violent with another woman. If he's secure in his masculinity, he would never do that. And so I think as women, we should know who we should even associate with because you can pick up those tendencies right away. And if this person's aggressive, I don't even want to deal with them. But I would also say too that this is when passive aggressiveness can work, and I find that it works. I've used it before. If I find that somebody is disrespectful to me in a way that I know it was clearly them, if I had done something to evoke that or egg that on, then I would have a conversation with them. But if they're being rude for just no apparent reason at all, I just ignore them honestly, and it works every time because then they start to get almost obsessive, like, oh, she's not saying anything to me. Then they start to reflect and we're like, oh, maybe I said something that was rude or wrong. And so to me that always works. It's kind of like, if you're going to be disrespectful to me, then I don't even want to have a conversation with you. But I think too, one thing that I think women underestimate, and this is it's not even that it's controversial, it's actually this will work, and this really works specifically for your husband or your significant other, because you wonder, how do you keep somebody in check like that? Well, how does because a man could technically get assertive and yell, and if that's not in a woman's nature, what can she do? Well, she can use one of the best qualities that she has, which is deny him special privileges. That's how you can basically not necessarily control your man, because that's not what it's about. But if he's not acting in the way that you want him to, yelling and all that won't work. You're just like, okay, nothing for you. And then he's going to start shaping up. So I think that's that, once again, that's mostly for somebody you're really committed to. I don't recommend women to go do that with anybody, because that breeds the toxic femininity too. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Megan. Stacy.
Well, I can address, what do you do as well if a man approaches you with physical violence? And I think it's a really interesting issue. Do you fight back or do you acquiesce? And I've been in, not proud of how I ended up in these situations, but twice I ended up in a situation where a clearly compromised masculine person tried to, one attempted rape and one physical pushing around. And I didn't back down. I fought back. I maintained my confidence. I didn't get scared. I stayed confident, and they both quit. So I don't know, maybe they're just my instances that just happen to be like that, but it's my experience.
Thank you for sharing your experience, Stacy, and I'm sorry that those things happened to you. I think that dealing with verbal aggression is a different animal from dealing with physical harm. I do believe in defending oneself, and I think every human should know basics of self-defense. But I want to circle back to what Megan brought up about how sometimes passive aggression can be useful. I think that's an interesting question. And it made me think also about manipulation and how, like, for example, if a woman is going on a date, she wants to be attractive, so she puts lipstick on. Is that being manipulative? You know, like in a way, but I don't think that's wrong, you know? So, or, you know, even like, you know, if you go into a store in a fancy, okay, so if you're in a fancy restaurant, depending on the type of music that is playing, people will order more expensive wines. So the restaurant is manipulating the customers by playing this fancy music. Is that right or is that wrong? You know, some instances of manipulation may be okay and some may not be okay. So it's just, I think, something interesting to think about. And it's also important for us to know our values and our boundaries and what's acceptable to us and what's not acceptable to us. And I think also keeping in mind the golden rule, treat others the way you would want to be treated. It is really interesting to think about, though. Okay, I'm looking at the comments. Oh, yeah, more about fighting back physically. Sometimes fighting back can make things worse. Megan says she thinks manipulation is natural. It's our responsibility as individuals to have a self-awareness strong enough to not be shaped by outside influences. Bingo. Yes, thank you, Megan. I think you hit the nail on the head, because if I am in a fancy restaurant and fancy music is playing, I need to have self-awareness and be aware of what I can afford to order on the menu and what I cannot afford to order on the menu, regardless of what kind of music is playing. I like the emphasis on self-responsibility, because in the end, that's all we can really control ourselves. And blaming outside external factors does not set one up for success, in my opinion. Stacy says she thinks it's bad manipulation if the intent is diminishing of others. You can play music to help people. You can play music to make them part themselves from more money than they should. Yeah, so, yeah, Bad manipulation if the intent is diminishing of others. But the thing is, I think sometimes some people need to be put in their place or diminished in a way. So isn't it interesting how both are forms of manipulation, Megan says? Yeah. Could you speak more to that, Megan, please?
Yeah, so the idea of playing music to help people is great. It's also a form of manipulation, just as playing music for somebody to buy more wine at a fancy restaurant is also manipulation. It's once again, I think it's just natural, the tendency to want to manipulate others. The desire to put on lipstick before you go on a date to look pretty is manipulation. Is it good or bad? I mean, it's really neither. It just is. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was getting at, is that basically it's not that it's good or bad, it just is. But going back to having the self-awareness to be able to be a whole person and to be aware of what's going on around you, to not be influenced by things like for example, a lot of school is manipulation. Most of the entire modern school system is manipulation. So I don't even though I really kind of am upset at a lot of things that happen in school, I can't really call it bad, because I see that it's just whoever created it, it's just natural. And so we have to become self-aware to realize the manipulation and to stop it in our tracks.
Yes. I think I agree with what you're saying, Megan, because there is good manipulation and there's bad manipulation. I mean, if I'm having a party and I want people to be in a good mood, I'm going to play some happy music. And that's manipulating, but it's okay. You know, it's just, you know, like part of life. You can't really get around it. So yeah, it is very important to have self-awareness and know why you do the things you do and what you stand for and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Yeah, and as you're saying, Megan, ask yourself what the desired outcome is. And I would add to that, why? Why do you want that desired outcome? Okay, your hand is up.
Yes, I was reading the comment that mentioned just us being responsible and also just manipulation. And when someone mentioned money, it made me think of, I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but it made me think of the casinos when I go to Vegas. And I hadn't paid attention at all until someone said, when you go inside, notice how it's set up. They're not going to have the windows or the multiple clocks, and they have that fun chimey music every time you pull that lever. They are manipulating you to, I don't realize how much time has gone by. How much money have I put in this machine? I'm so encouraged to hear those chimes that just make me feel so fun. So yes, it's definitely just the manipulation. And when you mentioned the music at a party, yes, definitely fun, upbeat. Everyone wants to party and stay because they're getting that good feeling. But I've noticed also at the same time, when you want to, I guess, manipulate the people, it's time to leave. What happens? They pull the plug, that music cuts out, the lights come on, and you realize, okay, it's time to leave. Like the party's over here, anyways. So that is interesting to observe.
Yes, I think awareness of yourself is good, but also awareness of how other people are manipulating you work, or how organizations or news outlets, like their techniques, to be aware of all that. Just awareness in general, I think, is a good idea. All right, so yes, manipulation is insidious, often hard to notice. Yes, manipulation can be very, very subtle. Okay, so any other comments on toxic femininity or any of the other things that we talked about before we move into closing comments? Okay.
No.
All right. So, Kathleen, how about you go first? Closing comments you'd like to share?
Okay, I think it was a really interesting topic. You know, I guess there can be both toxic masculinity and femininity, really. So it and manipulation is a part of that. I think I mean, I've noticed it more here, actually, you know, with that kind of manipulation, at least with recruiters. And, you know, because they always want to get the business and they want you to make them money if you get hired. So there's quite a bit of that manipulation in that. I mean, it's a bit strange in the sense of like, how do you say stop to that when you like really want a job? Like you don't want to be manipulated for that job, you know. But like one of the jobs I applied for, they said, well, it only pays 32,000. Is that okay? And I'm used to making 35,000 or more a year. My last job was 38, so that's like going down 8,000. So it's quite a difference. But I want a job. And somebody said to me this weekend that maybe you should go for a job in a grocery store or something like that. And I was like, I haven't worked, what do you call basic income jobs? since I was in college, in university. So it's hard to go back when you work so hard to, like, move your way up, to go back down again. Yeah, so it's like, it's really frustrating. I don't know what I'm going to do in the next, my money runs out in the next few months. So we'll see what happens, I guess. Just have to be positive. But it's, I mean, just the manipulation part. I'm not a manipulative person, so I sort of, sometimes I get frustrated that there are people who like lie to get jobs, or like get other people to do things for them to, you know, get a job, or people who know somebody, but it's like, I don't know what to do as far as seeing that. I like to do it the honest way, but sometimes doing it the honest way doesn't get you anywhere, I think. But I mean, I've always done it the honest way. But I feel like people, who don't do it totally the honest way get further, in their career, further or better salaries, or, it's just frustrating. But that's all I can think of as far as this discussion. But it was a good topic.
Thank you, Kathleen. We are rooting for you to find the job that you're looking for, and please, if you do get a job, let us know, and we can all celebrate with you. But thank you for being here.
Thanks.
So, Kay, your closing comments, please.
Yes, as always, just always enjoy, especially how we'll start on one topic and then we'll just break off into other topics. So always a great discussion. It's a great idea, Stacy. I really like this one, and I'm looking forward to next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Megan, your turn.
Stacey, I think it was a great idea that you brought to the table. I always love seeing you present ideas, and I love the personal examples that you brought into it and the storytelling. I think it really helped us understand more, because sometimes with super big ideas, it's hard to follow, but when you incorporate the storytelling, it's a lot easier. And yeah, I think we all had a great discussion. I did want to say one little thing about manipulation, how it being so subtle. And I think Stacey said it's insidious and often hard to notice. Think about it in movies, because we all like watching a movie. We think it's harmless. Well, notice how the movies are actually telling us how we should feel. They play the sad music when we should be sad, or when we should be happy, they start playing happy music. And so we don't even realize that, but by watching a movie, we're pretty much being manipulated. So yeah, once again, great discussion, and I do look forward to the next time. So I yield the floor.
Thank you so much, Megan. Yes. Actually, as someone who works in the performing arts, yeah, this kind of is manipulation. But again, there is good manipulation and bad manipulation. Stacey, you can offer your closing remarks, and then I'll say some things to finish.
Well, thank you guys. I have discussed this before, and you guys brought up all sorts of new stuff and solutions to it that I really appreciate. So thank you very much. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. And thanks for your kind words. look forward to next week.
Wonderful. Although I actually did want to ask Stacy, is this idea in Agora written in your profile?
Yes, it is. I changed a couple of things, but it is almost entirely the same there.
Okay, wonderful. So for those of you who support this idea that Stacey presented today, if you have a profile in Agora, please go to agora-ilp.org and add this idea to your ideological profile and express support for it. That would be helpful for Stacy and also helpful for getting more people to see this idea and making it more public, this thing that's been hidden. And I also do intend to do that once this meeting is finished. So in closing, I would like to thank everyone again for coming. And I also think it interesting that we begin with a topic and then continue with subtopics and follow this thread. I enjoyed touching on things that touched on toxic femininity, from role models to manipulation, and like these things that seem kind of different on the surface but are connected in different ways. So next week we have another meeting, same time, same channel, different topic. And I am going to be presenting on fairness and justice and how they are similar and how they are different. So I do hope you will join us for that meeting. But I wish you all a very great day. Thanks again for coming. And this concludes our meeting.